none of that could have been done also without a partnership of the private sector. My question to you is, how do we further encourage the private sector to take the lead in the provision of the PIDA-PAP 2 project by 2030, just as we've seen you do in Egypt?
Thank you very much for your question, and let me answer it in English so that the majority here can understand also with, of course, our French colleagues. I will start with putting some very important numbers about realities in Egypt when President Sisi came to power in 2014. Egypt was lacking behind 4 decades in terms of infrastructure. So in terms of electricity, the whole mega power that we have, it was 28,000 megawatts in a country that consumed daily more than 30,000. So in just 8 years, we have now the capacities of 52,000 megawatts, almost double. And the most important thing, that it is a mix between the traditional and renewable energies. We have the 4th largest solar panel plants in the world now in Aswan, which is Bemban, which is totally a private-public partnership mechanism. In terms of roads, if you would like to attract investments, you have to have the network that connects between cities, between industrial areas, with ports, and all of these kind of things. We have been able to develop and improve more than 17,000 kilometers of highways and main roads all over the country. We have been able to rebuild our ports and airports to really have this kind of efficient and most modernized facilities that will attract investments. In terms of communication, we have now a very good advanced ICT system and network, and also our massive work in natural gases and turning Egypt from an importer to now net exporter of natural gas and become a hub for the Eastern Mediterranean and Africa for this. And this was not just to spend, as I mentioned in my speech, these billions of US dollars, but we are paving the road and paving the whole setup for private sector to come and step in and invest more and more in a country. The private sector will never look at a country to invest in or step in without the basic infrastructure. But in addition to the infrastructure, definitely regulation, laws, and ease of procedures. This is again a very crucial issue. And that's why Egypt was very concentrating in recently to ease up the steps and procedures to attract the private sector. And honestly speaking, sometimes this mega infrastructure should be the main role of the government or public sectors, because sometimes the private sector, of course, will have the fear to enter and step in countries, in African countries, that maybe can categorized as risk in terms of finance and stabilities or whatever. So when a country spend all of this amount of money to provide this kind of infrastructure, then come the main role of the private sector, which is much better than the governments in managing, operating, and even expanding this kind of infrastructure. And this will never come without laws and regulation and transparency in such kind of things. That's why we have been concentrated very much in easing up the process, attracting more and more the private sector to come and step in the coming period. One of the most important steps that maybe not too much country has made it that Egypt issued a very important document recently, which we call it the State Ownership Policy, which is giving a roadmap in which areas that the country and the public sector or the government will enable the private sector to come and take the leading role. And this is a very important issue. So partnership with the private sector is crucial for Africa. But here I will put some very important issue. If we are speaking about access to finance, I'm here speaking to our international development partners. Africa has been always seen as, I'm going to say it like this, the golden location to exploit natural resources, mines, and everything. And this vision has to change. Because if you are speaking about a continent now that accommodates more than I think 1.5 billion inhabitants, and it is expected to grow and grow and becoming one of the largest continents in terms of human resources and even in terms of economy, you have to revisit the whole vision and spend and helping this country to build its infrastructure, because you are going to gain more and more than the only natural resources in the future. This means that you have to provide such kind of soft loans or soft and long-term loans and access to finance to African countries, and not to be categorized as risk credit countries, because this will mean very simply that if African countries would like to get access to finance, it will be with huge interest rates, which will never be affordable. Such kind of things has to be revisited totally from the international institutions that provide finance, so that they can help this continent to build its infrastructure, which will definitely benefit them on the medium and longer term. The last message that I would like to give it to all African countries, I think it is now the time to build, as His Excellency President Macky Sall mentioned, such kind of partnership and the integration between the private sectors in our countries. They are able, they have the capabilities, they have the human resources and even the finance to make consortiums that can come and step in and build infrastructure, ICT works, and all of these kind of things with their own capabilities. This is very important, and that's why we have to activate and we have to get real political will to activate our African trade agreement and put it in the place, because this is going to be our main base for benefiting from our own resources and capabilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you so much.